So let's just talk about it's harder to walk on your own, which is what we heard the song refer to. So what is it that we've got to do to really build on not having to walk alone? And let's face it, that's what friends are for. So why do you think friends are important? Anybody? Yes? Yeah, so that's what you're talking about, right? Your friends become your network, and they introduce you to other friends. And so, presumably that's what your family does for you too. Do you recognize this family? Does anybody recognize this family? Yeah. How many of you have watched The Modern Family? It's a pretty funny show. So what kind of people do you think your family and your friends can introduce you to? Any thoughts? Besides other friends or other family members? Yeah. Easy. Anybody else? There you go. So you're starting to get into talking about coworkers, bosses, people who will have access to other workplaces or know of other workplaces. So that's what you do about building your network. And that's what a network ends up looking like, a network of your family and friends. So I think when you're first starting out, when you're trying to make that transition from school to work, you know, back in the Stone Ages when I graduated from high school and university, there was, networks were not something that we worried about. You kind of stumbled along and found a job. At least that's what I did. Eventually I found a job. But I think in today's world, it's a whole lot different, and networks are important. And when you think about the average person probably knows about 200 people. When you think about your family members and your friends and your acquaintances and your neighbors, you probably know about 200 people. So you do the math, and each person within your network of 200 people knows 200 people. I haven't done the math, but if anybody is quick with the numbers, I think that'll quickly take you to something like 40,000 people. So it can be pretty vast really quickly, and that is what social networking is all about, isn't it? So how do you actually tap into that network? How many of you are either on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter? How many of you are on Facebook? How many on LinkedIn and Twitter? If you're looking at a network from a professional perspective, which is what we're talking about here, it's a work perspective. LinkedIn is a very useful tool, probably in many ways better than Facebook, because you don't get a lot of the noise about what you had for breakfast and what movie you saw last night and who you ran into on the street and what your kid did in the bathtub last night, which is what Facebook tends to be cluttered with, and so you tend to lose the focus. LinkedIn is a professional network. And it's a very useful network. They have groups that you can join just like you do. I mean, it works in many ways, just like Facebook does. But the purpose of it is for the purpose of business or the purpose of finding a job. There are jobs posted on LinkedIn. There are ways to, the same way that you connect with people on Facebook is the same way you connect on LinkedIn, and it's a very similar technology and a very similar concept, except it does respect the boundaries of being for business purposes. So any of you who are out there in the job market or are looking to help people move into a job market, either from school or from another job, LinkedIn is really a very useful tool. I'd be very careful with Twitter. How many of you are on Twitter? And what do you use it for? Can I ask you what you use it for?
Well, I used to just follow celebrities, but not interrogation and stuff that I'm interested in. Just I don't know, following celebrities.
So you use it you use it for entertainment purposes. Anybody else use it for anything else? The thing with Twitter is to be careful, like with all these tools. I mean, nothing ever leaves the internet. So it's really important that, particularly in today's world, that you're careful in what you post out there. If you've been to a party and you've posted pictures on Facebook, be very careful what those pictures do and look like, and what's in them, and whether you're in them, and how you're portrayed in them. Employers do go look at them. And they have ways of, we all have ways of finding our way through various networks of friends to get to whoever we want to know, and it can be a very detrimental tool if you haven't been careful with what you've posted out there, what you've posted on Twitter or Facebook. LinkedIn is less so, again, because it tends to be much more, people tend to seem to respect those rules. They're hugely useful tools in today's society, and particularly as you're making that transition from school to work. This is probably by far the easiest way to build your network and the least intimidating. Often in the business world, when we think about networking, we're thinking about events, and you've got a big room of people like we have here, and you're supposed to work the room and introduce yourself to people and hand out your business card and all those kinds of things. And people find that really intimidating, as do I sometimes. I would suggest to you that it is not the best way to get started. I think the best way to get started is one-on-one, through your family and your friends. Build your network, either personally, ask your mom, your dad, your brother, sister, your neighbor to introduce you to somebody. Let them know what you're up to. Let them know what's going on with you, and build your network person by person. And this is a great way to make that connection. At some point, you do have to come face-to-face with people, but you don't have to be doing it in a room with 200 people. That's totally intimidating. The same kind of networks important in face-to-face interactions also matter in social media. So it is using your family and your friends to extend that network. So I want to ask you, why do you think building your network is important? Opportunities? Anybody else? Yep. The ripple effect? Resources? Commonalities? Those are all good reasons, but there's one really most important reason of all, is that 80% of jobs are never posted. So it's, you can do all kinds of online resume submissions, and you can go after all kinds of jobs that are posted in the newspaper, but 80% of them are never on the... And that's how you find out about jobs, is through your network. So that's why it's important. Let's talk about how you're going to actually get your story out there, because the next thing is, once you start to build that network, you got to have something to tell the people. I mean, so what? So you want a job. What about it? We all want jobs at some point. So what do you think needs to be included in your story? When you tell your stories today, what do you include in your story? If you're looking for a job, anybody who's looking for a job. Sorry? Education? Experience? Passion? Volunteer work? So your story needs to include who you are, your education, your job goal, what is it you're looking for? There are a lot of jobs out there. Your experience, and we'll talk a little bit about this acronym STAR, storytelling. And your story shouldn't be very long. You don't want to bore people to death with it. At the same time, people are interested, and if they want to know more, they'll get into a conversation with it. But keep it to 2 or 3 minutes, no more than. So, I'm going to just take you through a little story that I made up, and we can talk about it. And it's not going to apply to all of you, but you can adapt it as you need it. So, my name is Chris Hornberger. I have graduated from, or I have a degree from, or a diploma from, and in my case, I graduated from the University of Western Ontario way too many years ago, which I'm not going to tell you about, with a degree in political science. In my story, I'm interested in getting a job or doing an internship, depending on what it is you're looking for, with a company that will allow me to use whatever I've learned, whether it's marketing, plumbing, electrician, carpenter, doctor, whatever the case may be. 4 minutes. My experience. It's important to talk a little bit about your experience, and it's important there to tell a story. So I worked at a call center last summer, and I had an interesting experience there. And this is when you use the acronym STAR: situation, task, achievement, and result. So situation describes what the situation was. And the customer in this case called to complain about a product he'd purchased, and he wanted a refund. And the product was not refundable. So my task in the call center, as I told him the rules, that he couldn't have a refund, but that I could give him a credit. So that was my task. The achievement was that he was not happy at first, but I told him that we had a sale coming up. So be a little resourceful there, and that he could use the credit to buy a sale item. He wanted to know when the sale was being held and how he could get his credit. And the result was that I processed the credit. He didn't get what he originally wanted, but he was pleased to hear about the sale, that he could use his credit in the sale, and he thanked me at the end of the call. So what you've described there is a situation for a potential employer that allows you to describe a pretty probably regular, mundane situation of anybody working in a call center, but it demonstrates some resourcefulness, because this person had the wit to think about the sale, and that was the twist on it. So think about your stories. I mean, we all have stories, and they don't have to be spectacular achievements. They don't have to be things that are Herculean. They need to demonstrate, though, that you have what kind of experience you have, and what it is that you were able to do in this particular situation. So you want to think about that. You want to think long and hard about and you should have a few of these stories up your sleeve. And this is a nice little way to organize it. So before I bring this to a close, there are 4 top tips that I thought about for successful networking. So you start with people you know, your family and your friends, and don't be shy to ask for their help. It is astonishing how people will step up if they're asked. The reason people don't step up is they're not asked. Be clear on what you're looking for. So if we go back to the story, I'm looking for a job in whatever I graduated in. But if you can be more specific than that, and often that's a very tough one. So you don't have to be so specific to say, I'm looking for a job in a call center, or I want to be a business analyst, or I want to be a plumber apprentice, although that's probably more straightforward. Sometimes you just don't know what kind of a job you want, but you probably have some idea of the kind of industry that you want to work in, or the kind of work that you want to do. So be as specific as you can, because there are a lot of jobs out there. Rehearse your story. You cannot just blurt these things out. You really do need to rehearse it. Write it down, think about it, come up with a few stories of things that you've actually personally accomplished that gives the listener some sense of who you are and the experience that you have. My last tip is always project a professional image, and that is both online and in person. Be careful what you post on Facebook and Twitter in particular. Have a professional-looking business card. They're not expensive, and you can design them yourself. You can have them printed up, and there's nothing better than to leave behind a professional business card. And always, always think about your personal image and how you project it. People make a judgment on another person that they meet within about the first 2 or 3 seconds that they meet them. And most important, when you shake someone's hand, have a really good, firm handshake. And you look the person in the eye. There's nothing worse than having a floppy handshake. It just doesn't work. So where possible, you need to be able to demonstrate that. And you can see here handing the business card to that person. So with that, I thank you very much. And